Okay, so I'm just going to run through our kind of standard protocol for digging a pit. It's a quick pit. Obviously, what you're actually going to do in a pit is going to vary depending on the problem of the day and the challenges and the location and all that sort of stuff. But let's get a standard protocol for this. So I've got some slope over here that I'm concerned I have to cross. Haven't had a whole lot of chance to gather other information today. We just got out, so I'm choosing a safe, representative, and polite spot right over here. Same aspect, same elevation. It's not impacted by a bunch of tree bombs or old tracks or anything like that. It's less than 30 degrees. It's a small slope, so I'm not worried about getting avalanche myself while I'm digging here. And then and it's also not in the middle of a big slope that people are going to be skiing through. So I'm going to go up here and see if I get kind of like normal, normal snow depths about what I would expect, and see if there's a bunch of trees or anything in it with my probe, and then I'll start digging. Feels like earth down there. I'm not feeling any obvious wind drifts. 155 there. 150. Yeah, okay. So those are like pretty consistent snow depths. Not a huge variation. Doesn't feel like any trees in there or anything. Nice uniform slope. Great. Yeah, I've got a meter wide there that I can use. I'll go ahead and pull my shovel out and start doing some digging. Okay. Great. So I've dug my pit about a meter wide and 100 to 120 centimeters deep, sort of depending on the problem, but my tests I'm not going to do won't really test layers deeper than 120 centimeters anyway. So meter to 1.2. The first thing I'm going to do is just get a quick kind of visual, trying to identify some layers there and see what might be suspect in here. Obviously this layer stands right out, right there. I can see some kind of crust layer right in here, and I can see some kind of layer right in there. Oftentimes I'll take a card if I have some kind of card available and do some kind of diagonaling swipes, which really bring out some of the layering in the snowpack. I've got my pit wall pretty darn clean, so I can identify stuff in there and get figure out where my layers of concern are. And yeah, and that looks like a few more layers deeper down, but it looks pretty consolidated down low. My guess is, just looking at it, the obvious things that stand out are this interface right here, and then there's something right up here in that top little bit there. So my guess is that these two would be my layers of primary concern. There's a couple weaknesses down here, and they might come out in the tests, and we'll take a look at that. But to start off, once I've identified those, then I'm oftentimes going to do a quick little hand hardness and just check and see about the structural issues around in here, see if there's real big changes in hand hardness at different layers within the snowpack. So I've got kind of fist hardness at the top there. Oh, and I've got a crust right underneath. Great, so there's a little bit of a crust there. What's that? That feels a little bit more like 4 fingers. Yeah, a little bit more like 4 fingers. Coming down, what is this layer here? Feels like a little bit of a crust, a much thinner crust with maybe some weak snow underneath it. Feels like maybe a little bit of a rime crust with maybe some facets under there. It's hard to say exactly, but a little bit of a crust I can feel right there. It's too thin to even try to see if it's pencil or knife hard because it's too thin, but I can feel it. It's pretty noticeable right there. And right underneath, again, a layer that's weaker. It's too thin to see if it's fist hard, but it just feels like it's not very dense. And then underneath, that's barely fist hard. That's more like one finger, one finger, one finger, and kind of keeps going one finger, kind of as deep as my pit goes. So there's a couple of kind of minor breaks down here, but I suspect that those aren't going to be my concerns. So on this crust layer up here and this crust layer there, I might have some facets associated with either one of those. So just quickly, that's my structural assessment of my pit. And then I'm just going to go ahead and move right into doing an extended column test to check about the strength and the propagation propensity. So off I go. Let's see. I'm going to need, I borrowed a probe from my partner, so I have 2 probes. Good. Great. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 90 centimeters wide, so there to there, and then 30 centimeters deep, so right there, and right there. Perfect. These are always a little bit hard to get the probe in vertically, but I'm certainly going to try my best. It always feels like I have it a little bit poked straight downhill towards me, but there we go. I think I've done a pretty good job there. Okay, that's all the way down. It's deeper than my pit, but that'll help support it. Get this one in as well. There we go. Feels like I have to push it all the way uphill to get it in position. Okay, great. And then I have, in my pocket, I've got my ECT cord here. So I'll just go ahead and take out my ECT cord and see if I can do this by myself. If I can't, I might need to have my partner come in here and help me out, but I might be able to do this by myself. Let's see if I can undo the cord by myself. There we go. Great. So I don't think that those crust layers are so hard that a cord won't be able to cut through. Sometimes if the crust layers are really hard, it can be difficult to get through crust layers. I'm going to try to keep these either perpendicular to the face or out a little ways so there's space for the column to fall into the pit. So either perpendicular or slightly out. Yeah, it feels like I can do this one by myself here. Okay, I'm just sawing back and forth, trying to get low down in this pit, try to expose. So I've got all 4 sides of this column that's 30 by 90 isolated. I can just leave my cord down there. I usually like to try to really excavate these sides a little bit more. So I'll take a saw, and with my saw I can even cut out a little slice there to really excavate the sides so that there's no friction on the side of the column. If it wants to pop out, it should be able to. Cut a little slice. Again, trying to make these things as neat as possible. Doesn't mean I need to take a long time to do it, but I just make an effort to make these cuts clean and vertical. Clean out this little slice on the side here. Okay, really reducing friction on the side there as much as I can. So the cord, making these cuts after I cut with the cord means that the probes stay in place a little bit better while I'm isolating with the cord. If there's a thinner side of my slab, then I want to choose that side to do my taps on. In this case, it looks pretty even. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this side. Take the shovel, put it on one side of my column, place it right in place there, making sure I don't overlap, especially in the back. Then I'm going to do 10 taps on the wrist and getting a good look at the front of this to see if I get any failures while I'm tapping. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I'm going to do 10 taps from my elbow. Those should be a little bit harder. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. At some point in there, I got kind of a broken failure of this upper layer here, but clearly no propagation on that. Nothing really to be concerned about there. So I got to 20 with taps from my elbow. Then I'm going to do 10 more taps from my shoulder this time. Pretty good hard wax. Trying to see if I can get anything deeper down to fail. 21, 22, 23, 24. I got one failure there, but I think that's just, you hit on it hard enough and it's gonna break, right? I was at 24, clear that out of the way. 25, 26, 27, 28. I got a little fracture again there, but a really broken and without any propagation on 28. After that fracture, I did another hit to see if I get propagation, and I didn't. 28, 29, 30. So no propagation in there. I got ECTN, which is to say extended column test with failure with no propagation. In the teens, a moderate failure in the upper layer, and in the 20s in the lower layer, but both of those were no propagation, Q3 broken, really inconsequential, not anything I'm worried about. I didn't get any failures lower down. Since I have this column isolated already, I'm going to go ahead and give a pry on the back side of it. Of course, I'll be able to break it off, but I'm just going to try to see kind of outside the bounds of the normal ECT what kind of, how much it takes to cause failure at any of these layers, and see if I do get propagation while I do it. So let's see, I'll just shove my shovel back in there, give a little pry. All right, so I was able to pull that off, but when I pulled it off, yeah, it's fairly clean, kind of moderately strong, kind of right at that layer that I identified. So I'd say that is my layer of primary concern right in there. It's not really concerning, but that's the layer I've identified as my primary concern in this pit. All right, so I'm going to try to bring this around to figuring out about strength, structure, and propagation propensity. So for strength, I had a moderate failure and a failure with moderate taps and a failure with hard taps. But neither one of those is really concerning for me. Let's see. So for strength, structure, the things I'm thinking about is, did I get propagation propensity, and what was the quality this year? I did not get propagation propensity, and the failures that I got in the bounds of my normal extended column test were broken, quality 3 shears. So I'd say propagation propensity is low. That's good. And then as far as structure goes, then I'm thinking about the weak layer of primary concern and trying to identify, do I have persistent grain type there? Is there a hardness difference, and is it within the top meter of the snowpack? So I'll take a quick look at this layer here. It looks to me like, I'm going to pull this out, my card, I can look at this, and even just with the bare eye, it does look to me like those are kind of some squared off crystals underneath where that crust was. And there is a hardness difference for sure because of that crust, and then I felt it initially, even when I was just doing my hand hardness right away. So I do have a hardness difference. I think I have a persistent grain type there, and it's within the top meter of the snowpack. So I have poor structure at this layer, which, is a concern that I could be getting false positives, but more likely it's a concern for future instability. It's not really a concern for today. So let's see, so I have 3 structural concerns. That's poor. but I had low propagation propensity. That's good. And I had moderate to high strength, and that's fair to good as well. Kind of put all that together, and not having met any of my critical criteria for a pit, then I'm going to say my stability in this pit is pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. So I've identified my my layer of primary concern. I want to figure out how far down below the snow surface that is, as well as my total snow depth. So my total snow depth here is 170. My layer of concern is at 130 or so. So that's 40 centimeters, 45 centimeters-ish. Yeah, so roughly 45 centimeters there. Let's see, and so then I'm going to start thinking about giving my pit report. So I need some additional information to go along with what I've actually found in here. I need to think about L for least CDs. L is my location. Okay, so I'm at the lower end of Happy Days on the north end of the ridge. Elevation, let's see, I'll pull out my handy dandy device here, and it looks to me like I'm at 7350. Location, elevation, aspect. Again, my handy dandy device is going to tell me due north. Okay. Location, elevation, aspect, slope, angle. Let's get my slope angle going on here. So test my slope angle, put that right on the snow surface and tap. And I measure that right at 24 degrees. Nice safe slope angle to dig in, steep enough that it's pretty easy to dig, but not worrisome at all. So location, elevation, aspect, slope angle, and then test results. All right, I've already been through my structure, strength, structure, and propagation propensity. I've given myself an overall stability rating. CDs, let's see. Character. I suspect that this is a persistent weak layer instability. Down in here, primary concern, but it's really a low level concern for today. So character, so I would be thinking about, is it a wind slab or is it a new snow instability? In this case, it's a persistent weak layer. D's depth. All right, and I already went through depth, so I have total height of snow at 170. My weak layer primary concern is 45 centimeters below the snow surface. And then CDS, so S is stability. I have my final stability as well. So let me try to put that all together. For my pit report, I'm on the north end of Happy Days Ridge at 7,350 feet. Due north facing slope, 24 degrees. My test results, I did an ECT, and I didn't get any propagation in my ECT. My propagation propensity was low. I got a couple of moderate to high strength failures, but with Q3 shears, really not any concern at all. There is a little bit of a structural concern with a persistent weak layer that I think is my layer of primary concern, roughly 45 centimeters below the snow surface. Today, I think that weak layer is not going to be very active, so I'm giving that my overall stability is fair to good, leaning towards good. Character is persistent weak layer. I got total snow depth of 170, weak layer 45 centimeters down, and overall stability is good. That's it.